Hello, Helen. Hi.
Welcome, Brian, to our
Yes.
podcast.
This is the podcast. We have decided to call the podcast, and this is really innovative. We've called it 1265, which is the Think 1265 podcast.
Exactly, in a bid to make ourselves feel younger and look much more hip.
Anyway, welcome to our podcast. So, Helen, why have we decided to do a podcast?
We are doing a podcast because, shock horror, teachers don't have time. And Brian's a teacher, I'm a teacher, and putting together long Facebook posts and funny little quips and memes and doing an awful lot of Zoom calls and things like that was eating away at our time. And too much of it. And it was not necessarily as effective as we would have wanted it to be either. So we figure a podcast may just be able to get through to some people who haven't had the time or the opportunity to listen to our wit and wisdom yet.
You're very kind. I also waffle too much, so that's the other problem.
We both do.
Yeah. Anyway, podcast ideas. We're going to try and put a podcast out
Yeah.
once a week, once every 2 weeks, maybe something like that. We will have a supercut one you can listen to in the car on the way to work, and we will have the slightly longer one, which is all the outtakes and us waffling a little bit. But we'll try and keep them within 20 minutes or so, anyway. And then we'll put little clips out, and we'll try and deal with one big question every podcast. Now, for the avoidance of doubt, before we go any further. Right.
Yes,
For
Brian.
all those powers that be out there who are looking at this, we are two full-time teachers, and Think 1265 is an entirely independent campaign run by two full-time teachers. We do not speak for our employer. We do not speak for our school. We do not speak for our head of department.
No.
We do not speak for wee Jimmy.
No.
We do not speak for our union.
No.
We are speaking entirely for ourselves. So if you
We
don't
only have
agree with
ourselves to
anything.
blame.
Yeah, if you don't agree with what we're saying, or you think what we're saying is mean or ill-spirited or whatever, that's us. It's not anyone else. So, you know.
Damn it.
Yeah, I know. Don't worry, we have no shame or career prospects. No.
Oh, speak for yourself. So we sat and thought about what could we talk about that people want to hear about, and hopefully everybody over the summer has been walking their way to a little postbox in order to post something off in a thing we call the action short of strike action ballot. And we thought to ourselves, what are people going to be talking about on that first Baker Day in August? And of course, Brian, it is
The workload issue. The workload issue that has led to our action sort of strike action ballot. All the trade unions, all the teacher trade unions that are part of the teaching negotiating committee have all got a ballot going on, and that ballot's due to finish, I think, sometime next weekend, and at which point, if people have voted for it, there will be industrial action. Now, it's industrial action short of strike action. The purpose of that is that we can restrict our workload by not doing the make work, busy work stuff that we are asked to do, and trying to stick very strictly within our working guidelines, while not actually hurting the kids. So it's very important to actually understand that. We're not trying to shut the schools down. Johnny will still get his science teaching, he will still get his homework, he will still not do his homework.
probably he'll get it to a higher standard, quite frankly.
Yeah. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but ASOS is it's a reduced form of industrial action, where it's basically a lack of cooperation in some aspects of additional workload. And the reason we're doing this is because of the debacle surrounding the independent review of workload. Now, we thought 2 years ago that all this workload issue was actually fixed with TNC 22 /
A few moments later.
no 24/2, right?
That's the one.
And that's how we set up. We got set up as a campaign because of TNC 2024/2, the new workload agreement. And we thought that teachers don't really know what their rights are in a school. So Helen and I came up with this silly idea, and honestly, we weren't even drinking. We came up with this idea
weren't.
of starting a campaign.
It was
We
lunchtime.
weren't. It was lunchtime. It was afternoon. We came up with this idea of explaining to teachers what their rights were. And when we looked at the workload agreement, it seemed that if everyone was getting this, and if everyone was sticking to this, our workload would be pretty damn sweet. But Helen, what happened?
Well, It was just before Easter, on a sunny afternoon, where Brian and I met and started up this campaign. And we were coming out of action and going into schools and thinking people really, really need to be educated. People need to understand what TNC 2024/2 is all about, because, shock horror, I didn't really know what my rights were as a teacher. I didn't really know where this 1265 thing had come from. I didn't really understand, to an extent, just how much I could try to get it enforced in my school in terms of my own career, I suppose. So I started to tear it apart, and I spent an awful lot of time reading through the agreement, which, on the face of it, was actually a pretty good document. Looking at all of the individual things that accumulate to form my 1265 hours in a year, directed over 195 days. And we developed a website. We wrote a little book last summer to educate the profession, I suppose, in a non-intrusive way, in a way that was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, a little bit humorous, to try to get teachers to engage with what their working rights were and how they were actually documented in our legal working agreements.
Yeah.
However, it didn't work. It didn't get put in place, and here we are again at the beginning of action short of strike.
Now, when you said it didn't get put in place, it's all being signed by all the sides. The management side agreed, the Department of Education agreed.
It didn't get put in place where it mattered. There we are. It got put in place, it was agreed, and it was signed off.
And where should it have mattered that it didn't actually make it in?
It should have mattered in my classroom. It should have mattered in my directed time budget. It should have mattered in my daily working life. And by my, I mean the royal we, the profession of teachers, the 20,000 odd people who are employed to make the world a better place on a daily basis in our classrooms. And that's the only place it actually counts.
And what sort of happened with TNC 24/2 and other ones prior to that and after that is that they look great on paper, but they never managed to get their way into the implementation phase. Now, there are reasons for that. So, Helen, right, I'll throw out a reason. You give me an example. Right. So, unclear language.
We would advise, we guide, we would expect that it would be preferable for it's things like PPA. PPA may be done at the discretion of the principal. That's not an instruction. That's an awful lot of it can, it can't, it's up to somebody else to decide. We're not really making a decision. And then tradition and practice creeps in, and maybe in a school PPA has never been done off-site, and the principal's a little bit scared that, someone in the Department of Modern Foreign Languages or someone in PE or whatever isn't actually going to meet a deadline because they've been allowed to do their work at home on their sofa, and therefore nobody gets to do their PPA anywhere. So it's the unclear language is preventing an awful lot of implementation from happening.
That's interesting. Yeah, that is interesting as well, because it also points to a trust thing. There's a trust issue in the profession. I know all of you who are now back at school will see that in the majority of schools. There will be there's an undercurrent that if you're not being totally reminded of stuff, told to do stuff, sat on, you won't do it.
Yeah.
It's almost like teachers are lazy gets who won't do anything unless it's absolutely essential and they're told to do it. You don't have to have 4 people stand over you telling you to do it. Now, the unclear language is exactly one of the major problems. Whenever we're looking at something being negotiated, so you've got the teacher representatives, management representatives, they're talking about a particular issue. So a brilliant example is coursework. Say for example, we as teachers are saying to our managers, look, we believe coursework needs to be in our paid hours. It needs to be something that we do as part of our working hours, marking that coursework. Then we would expect them to say something as simple as coursework is part of your directed time.
Full
right?
stop. Full stop.
That's it. That's simple language. Coursework is part of your directed time. Or as there are examples in TNC 24/2, so-and-so is part of your directed time and must come out of your 1265 hours. Right. That's clear, isn't it? You can't argue with that. But instead we get things like managers are encouraged to take into account the relevant demands of, you know, but really what this is it's trying to leave open this barnyard door to push people into the belief, and it is belief, that you have to do work you do not finish in your working day at home.
Yeah.
That you, being a teacher is having homework forever until you die.
And that is part of the poor guidance from above, whether above is the governance of the school, the leadership of the school, but actually from the minister himself all the way down through the language that's chosen. Then, worst case scenario, another reason that the implementation isn't happening is because it sometimes gets ignored. Sometimes school leadership, and it's only sometimes, it's not every school leader, but sometimes it is being ignored. They'll do it anyway if I ask them to, so I'm going to keep asking them to. But that brings in another problem as to why it's not being implemented, and that's that teachers are a bit scared. Teachers are a bit afraid, in some cases, to speak up, you know, to have that voice in the staff room and say, oh, well, has this been workload impact assessed, this new initiative that you're bringing in? Have you agreed that with me in my time budget? Have you thought about what I'm not going to do so that this can be done? And they're professional conversations. They're not you starting a riot in the staff room. They're just professional conversations that unfortunately, over the decades of education as it stands today, have just not been encouraged. And therefore, we breed with every new season, whether new NQTs come into the building, this fear of professional dialogue. You know, we will talk about the pedagogy processes in schools, what works for children, how to safeguard children, all of those things until the cows come home, and rightly so. But we don't necessarily talk about how best to use our most expensive resource. How can we get the best out of our teachers in the time that we have with them?
That's because rather than looking to get the best out of teachers, it's very often the case of looking to get the most out of teachers. You know, I've got this champion racehorse here and it's amazing. Now, what if I put a cart in its back? What if I put two carts in its back?
It's going to work harder.
It's going to work harder. Yes, that's a real problem. Now, if you look at other professions and other jobs, every other job, or pretty much every other job, will have these limitations baked in. And we do to an extent. There is one part of our contract which leaves things open, but that's only to do with planning and marking lessons that you choose to do yourself in your own time. So it's if you're doing a lesson tomorrow on something and you just have this great idea, you want to do something to change it, to add something to that lesson, then you could do that in your own time voluntarily. You don't get paid for it. Right, you don't get any extra pay. If you're a teacher who spends every single night that you're teaching doing 2 hours of prep for your lessons, you don't get an extra penny compared to a teacher who never does it. Teacher never does it at all. It's all prepared for them. They never do anything. So it's an unpaid thing. We call it the zombie clause. We'll have a whole episode about the zombie clause. But apart from that, everything else, every single thing else, from phoning wee Johnny's parents to tidying your room in the morning, has to come from your 1265 paid hours. And when your 1265 paid hours are completed, off you go on holiday to Marbella or wherever. Right? And it doesn't matter if that is at the end of June or if that is in the middle of March. When it's done, it's done. Now, that is the problem we have with workload. Now, because of that problem, there was a huge Barney last year, and the minister eventually intervened to try and win over teachers, and we argued for the intervention as well. He put in place, or promised to put in place, independent review of workload. Now, these were professionals. There was, I think, 2 school leaders and someone from the civil service, and they looked in detail and took tons of evidence, and they got exactly the same results as we got 3 times in the spout.
Shock horror.
Yeah, and every other person who's looked at the research about workload got the same thing. And this is what they said. This isn't just two people, Helen and I, having a go and not knowing our place. This is what they said. They said the teaching can bring joy, fulfillment, and immense societal benefits, but it's also a challenging, complex, and stressful profession. And then listen to this bit and have it tattooed on what remains of your soul. Current workloads are unsustainable. They compromise the well-being of teachers, undermine the development of teachers' professional capital, and diminish the overall efficacy of our education system. So they're bad for teachers, they're bad for schools, they're bad for students, they're bad for the profession, they're bad for the education system as a whole, and they're bad for Northern Ireland. So they put forward, was it 27 recommendations. Yeah. So there's two halves to this. The first half of the recommendations, second half's are stuff they need to do in the future with more money. But the 27 recommendations, some were better than others, but they would have immediately done something.
Made a difference.
They would have done something. And everyone sat on the edge of their seat waiting on the minister going, yay! And they sat and they waited a bit more. And then Christmas came and New Year came and we waited a bit more. And then there was an announcement. And he welcomed the report and said, I shall get back to you in due course with an action plan. And then we waited again. Meanwhile, everyone in the edusphere, the people that we work with and within trade unions as well, everyone's like, what the very hell? This guy...
this isn't how we work in education. We're told to do something, we do it straight away.
Yeah, it's like little email in the morning. Oh, if you wouldn't mind, could you have this done by 3:30 this afternoon sort of thing? So this was like very, very odd. And then in April time, we got the plan. And the problem, again, as with all of these things, the plan had the same issues. It was taking too long. The wording, Helen?
Unclear. Very unclear. Guidance, suggestions. We would prefer if.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
Some things were watered right down. Some things were taken a bit out of context and made worse.
Yeah.
There was a whole pile of things. And obviously the unions jumped straight in and started negotiating and trying to work. But again, all we were saying, all anyone was saying was, look, here are 27 things. A lot of teachers didn't think it went anywhere near far enough. But if the man had just said, right, let's do these 27 things.
Superb. My day tomorrow is going to be better.
But no. And this is the big problem we have, and the reason why we're approaching industrial action again is because it doesn't matter what's signed or what's agreed or what is announced or what emails are sent from Department of Education, EA or whatever. It does not matter. None of that matters. All that matters to us is what our day looks like on Monday.
Yeah. Yeah.
And our day on Monday is going to look exactly like it did a year ago.
5 years ago.
Yeah, it's going to be grim. So after all of this work, we still haven't had the improvements that we have been promised. Now, that leads us to what happens if the ballot comes in with a yes vote. Helen, tell me why...
Action short of strike action.
Yeah, tell me why teachers love it. Why do teachers love ASOS?
We love it because we get to go home at the end of the day. We don't have to stay in teacher detention and listen to someone read us a PowerPoint. We don't have to do unnecessary jobs. We are not expected to achieve miracles within the 6.5 hours that we may be inside the school building. We get, wait for this one, Brian, we get to enjoy teaching children. Because I'm not reading emails at the same time as phoning somebody in some area that is loosely related to education to give them a report on something that I have decided to do or has been told to me that I have to do. We don't have to implement 1,000 new initiatives in our schools because we're on action short of strike action. Do we still work hard? Yes. Do we still want to work hard? Yes. Do we still want to do what is right for the children so that they leave our classrooms educated, empowered, knowledgeable, free thinking? Yes, because, and here's the shocker, that's why most of us went into education in the first place.
Right, so unfortunately in our first podcast, that's as far as we got. So Helen, I guess the last word there. We had a bit of a technical issue with the uploading, but we are learning, and we'll be doing another recording on Friday to delve a little bit deeper into these issues. Listen, I want to thank you for tuning in. We are going to try and put something out every week or 2 weeks, and just as it's such a very busy time at the minute with Workload, and it is just us chatting about the issues that are affecting all of us, and I hope you find it helpful. If you've got any questions or anything that you'd like us to address, please drop us a line. You can drop us a line on Facebook or drop us a line on contribute@think1265.org. And we'll try and answer those questions as best we can. And next up, I believe we're going to be looking at directed time, how it works, what it's all about, and what the problems with it are, and really trying to help people with their directed time budgets at the start of the year. But it's going to be a busy few weeks, and we just want to thank you again for tuning in and supporting Think 1265. With regard to that, this is going to be a little bit of an expensive thing for us to run the podcast. It's quicker, it saves us time, but it does cost a little bit because of the software needed to communicate across the way. So we will be hopefully setting up some sort of Patreon type thing on Ko-fi, and if we can get a handful of people just supporting us for a few quid a month, it will help us continue to run this thing over the next year. Anyway, more information as and when, and we shall see you very soon. Bye now.